Parker, and this is Roller Coaster Physics.
Roller coaster physics. The purpose of this lab was to see the way different types of energy affect the build and performance of roller coasters. Energy can be defined as the ability to do work, and it is also measured in joules. The different type of energy involved with roller coasters include gravitational potential energy, kinetic energy, and internal energy. Gravitational potential energy is the energy stored in an object as the result of its vertical position or height. An important relationship regarding gravitational potential energy is as the height of the object increases, the gravitational potential energy of the object also increases. Kinetic energy is the energy of motion. The most important relationship regarding kinetic energy is as the velocity of an object increases, the kinetic energy of the object increases as well. Internal energy is the energy that is absorbed from one object to another in the form of heat or sound. For internal energy, as the temperature of an object increases, the internal energy of the object also increases. In this lab, the group tested the different types of energy and their effect by building a miniature roller coaster. This image shows the overall setup and design of our roller coaster. The name of our roller coaster was There's a Snake in My Boot because of the fact that the marble at the end of the roller coaster actually goes into a boot. We'll get more in depth on the design of our roller coaster later in the video. The materials that were used in the experiment were a marble, pipe foam insulation, duct tape, scissors, zip ties, a B-spy, a meter stick, camera, and a hot glue gun.
Methods and construction. The group jumped right into the construction of the roller coaster after piping was cut in half and ready to be used as track, taping the start of the coaster as high up on the wall of the classroom for maximum velocity for the first loop. When the loop was created, the first loop was malfunctioning, so another had to be constructed. Using a zip tie to fasten the piping together to form the shape of a circle, the loop was then taped to the wall as well as the start of the coaster. Following the construction of the loop, the B-spy was placed in a cutout area at the bottom of the loop to measure the marble's velocity. The series of hills, 2 hills, was created by forming the shape of the hills and taping it to the wall while being taped to the end of the loop. Methods and construction continue. A reverse was created after the series of hills so that when the ball completed the second hill, it jumped off the track and landed onto another piece of piping that created a U-shape. It had a hole in the bottom created by a hot glue gun, such that the ball fell and continued its path. After falling out of the reverse, the marble continued into 2 curves in opposite directions. The curves were created by slight bends of the track before being taped to the top of the cabinet perpendicular to the wall. After the second curve, the ball continued down a corkscrew that was taped in between the cabinet and the wall, so that it was halfway down its total distance from the top to the bottom. After completing the corkscrew, the ball fell into a slight freefall into a clear tube so that it was falling straight down towards the floor. For the last trick, of course, the ball traveled through 2 corkscrews and at the end of the last into a boot that was found in the physics classroom. Last step in completing the roller coaster was measuring the radius of the loop and measuring the radius of the first hill, as well as figuring out how far the top of the coaster was from the floor and the mass of the marble. This data was used to help find the potential energy, kinetic energy, and the apparent weight of the marble at different times during its ride.
Hello, friends of the physics world. Today, I will go through some of the various aspects that went into building this gruesome and dangerous roller coaster. Before we go on with the video today, our group would like to give a very special thank you to Dell Technology. This video would not be possible without Dell Technology.
Easy to buy.
First, we will talk about the design of the roller coaster There's a Snake in My Boot. There's a Snake in My Boot was required to have at least 5 unique stunts. Those 5 unique stunts included a loop, series of hills, free fall, corkscrew, and jump reverse drop combination. Most importantly, the track featured a drop into a boot at the end of its run so that the marble safely landed in the boot upon finish. Second, we will talk about the trial and error. Of course, every roller coaster that has ever been built has had trial and error. One of the most important parts of the construction of There's a Snake in My Boot was to make sure after every modification of the coaster that the ball could still travel through the course as it was planned. With many trials, students can find ways to fix and improve the course when there was something wrong, instead of continuing to add on to the course without knowing if something was wrong. Groups were given a large roll of duct tape so that even though it wouldn't all be used, It allowed the groups to test many different ways of constructing the course without running low on material. Many aspects of the course had to be changed and modified as test trials went on. One notable change was replacing the first loop. The first loop was working the first couple of days, but after the third day, there was something wrong with it, and after many changes, a new loop was created, which you can see here on the bottom. As you can see here, the many photos of testing which went on, which was very fun for the group, even though it countered with many struggles. Let's go. It's like a two. You know, if we keep doing it, the three will be able to. Don't worry, that's not the rest of it. I'm just getting it to.
Yeah.
All
right.
Great. All right. Making great progress here. Making great. Do we want to do a test run or what are you thinking? Yeah. All right.
On the left side of the slide, it shows all the math and calculations done by hand for the roller coaster. It also features the free body diagrams that show the marble at the top and bottom of its loop. The gravitational potential energy was 0.15 joules. The predicted kinetic energy at the base of the loop was 0.028 joules. The Q was 0.017 joules. Minimum velocity required over the loop was 1.039 meters per second. The apparent weight at the top of the loop was 0.164 newtons. The apparent weight at the bottom of the loop was 0.242 newtons. The G-forces was about 6.2 Gs. Apparent weight at the top of the hill was 0.0266 newtons. Math and calculations continued. Finally, students completed the measurements and math behind the coaster. First, the gravitational potential energy was found using the height at the top of the coaster multiplied by its mg. The total energy was subtracted by the GPE at the bottom of the loop to find the predicted kinetic energy at the bottom of the loop without the consideration of Q or internal energy. The minimum velocity required over the loop was found by taking the radius of the first loop, multiplying it by the acceleration due to gravity, then the square root of that. The apparent weight at the top and bottom of the loop was found by subtracting the mg of the marble to the net force and adding the mg to the net force respectively. However, to find the apparent weight at the top of the first hill, the mg was subtracted by the net force. To find the g-forces experienced by the ball at the bottom of the loop, its apparent weight was divided by its mg. And then it also shows all the formulas that were used in the calculations for this roller coaster.
To sum it all up, the purpose of this lab was to see the way different types of energy affect the build and performance of roller coasters. The experiment was done by using materials such as foam insulation, duct tape, zip ties. As talked about in trial and error, adjustments to the hills and bank turns along with the new loop were made to get the roller coaster to perform at its highest level. The trials of the roller coaster included 4 results. Those 4 results were the marble either made it through the whole track, it failed to go through the first loop, it failed to make the first hill, or fall out of the track after the reverse drop, which was very annoying for the group as it faced those 4 different results every day. In the future, some suggestions for improvement of There's a Snake in My Boot is using less tape on the track and a cleaner track in general. Some of the uncertainties that may have affected the outcome were the friction on foam piping, friction due to the tape of the track, movement of the track over the course of building, and bumps in the track that caused the marble to go airborne, affecting velocity. And that, folks, is the building of There's a Snake in My Boot.